In Thailand, there is a belief that not all the dead can leave this world in peace. Some souls remain, not because they want revenge, but because the truth was taken from them while they were still alive. This is not a story about a ghost that scares. It is a story about a man who was silenced, about a death ruled as ordinary, and about what happens when injustice is buried instead of answered. What you are about to hear is a story whispered for years in a small village. A story of a dead man who could not rest, because his name was never cleared. Chapter 1. A death that could not close its eyes. In rural Thailand, there is an old belief whispered rather than spoken aloud. A person who dies unjustly cannot close their eyes. A soul that leaves the body in anger will never truly depart. The body of Phra Chan was discovered just before dawn, when the mist still clung to the rice fields like a damp shroud. He was hanging from a wooden beam inside his small house at the edge of Ban Nong Phai village. The rope was coarse and old, the kind used for tying buffalo, not for ending a life. At first glance, the villagers said it was suicide. But the longer one looked, the more wrong it felt. Phra Chan's feet were not far from the ground. His neck bent at an unnatural angle, as if it had been forced rather than surrendered. His face had turned a dark, bruised purple, yet his eyes remained wide open, staring, unblinking, as though he had died in the middle of a protest he was never allowed to finish. The most disturbing detail was found when the cloth around his arms was loosened. His hands were tied tightly behind his back. No one spoke for a long time after that. A man who chose death would not bind himself like a criminal. And yet, the village headman declared calmly that fear was clouding everyone's judgment. He was alone, he said. Lonely men do desperate things. Still, something in the room refused to settle. The air felt heavy, pressing against the chest. Even after the body was taken down, the rope continued to sway slightly. Though there was no wind, a faint creaking sound echoed again and again, like the slow breathing of someone unseen. An old woman standing near the door murmured a sentence no one wanted to hear. He didn't leave on his own. That night, the house remained lit long after sunset, not by lamps, but by the memory of eyes that would not close, and a soul that clearly had no intention of resting. The villagers would later say that this was the moment everything truly began. Not with the death itself, but with the certainty that someone had died carrying an injustice too heavy to be buried. Chapter 2. The Man Who Had No Enemies. In Ban Nong Phai, everyone said the same thing about Phra Chan. He had no enemies. He was the kind of man people forgot to fear. Quiet, polite, always lowering his head when he passed others on the narrow dirt paths of the village. He lived alone in his wooden house at the far edge of the fields, repairing amulets, repainting faded yantra symbols, and writing protective charms for those who still believed in such things. Phra Chan did not drink. He did not gamble. He did not argue in public. Yet those who came to him often left with troubled faces. He had a habit of asking questions no one else dared to ask. Why were old graves being moved without ceremonies? Why did the spirits near the forest cry at night? Why had certain plots of land, once marked as burial ground, suddenly gained official seals? Weeks before his death, Phra Chan had visited the district office alone. He carried a thin folder wrapped in cloth. Inside it, copies of land records and handwritten notes. He told no one where he was going, but the clerk remembered his words clearly. "If something happens to me," Phra Chan said softly, "please remember that I tried to speak." The last person known to have spoken with him was Kamal, the village headman. Kamal told the villagers that evening. Phra Chan was troubled. He said the spirits would not forgive us. I advised him to let go of such thoughts. No one challenged Kamal. He had ruled the village for years. His voice calm, his authority unquestioned. But that night, a few villagers remembered something unsettling. Phra Chan had returned from Kamal's house unusually late. He had walked quickly, his shoulders tense, as if he were being followed. One woman swore she heard raised voices drifting from the headman's yard, short, sharp, and angry, before everything fell silent. When Phra Chan was found dead the next morning, the folder he always kept near his altar was gone. So were the papers. The villagers told themselves that a lonely man had finally broken under invisible burdens. It was easier than accepting another possibility, that Phra Chan had discovered something he was never meant to uncover. And in Thailand, when a man dies after learning the wrong truth, it is believed his spirit does not wander blindly. It waits.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.
Chapter 3. The Funeral That Refused to Rest. In Thailand, death is never hurried. A proper farewell is believed to guide the soul away from the living world. Without it, the dead may linger, confused, angry, or unfinished. Phra Chan's funeral was arranged quickly. Almost too quickly. By sunset, his body lay inside a simple wooden coffin at the temple. Monks chanted softly as incense smoke curled upward. Yet the air remained thick and unmoving. No breeze passed through the prayer hall, but the candles trembled as if disturbed by unseen hands. When the cremation began, the fire refused to take. The flames flickered, then died. The monks tried again, and again. 3 times the fire went out. Each failure met with growing unease among the villagers. Some pressed their palms together in prayer. Others refused to look directly at the coffin. An elderly monk finally whispered, his voice barely audible, "This one does not wish to leave." When the fire eventually burned through the night, something impossible remained. Among the ashes lay a dark fragment of bone, thick, curved, and blackened. The monk identified it quietly. The neck. No one spoke after that. Kamal, the village headman, ordered the remains collected immediately. "Do not spread fear," he said. "Strange things happen when people imagine too much." Yet as the urn was sealed, a sharp cracking sound echoed from inside, like wood snapping under pressure. That night, no one slept well. Dogs howled toward the edge of the village, where Phra Chan's house stood abandoned. The wind rose suddenly, rattling doors and prayer flags. Though the sky remained clear, a few villagers claimed they heard the faint sound of something creaking, slow and rhythmic, like a rope moving back and forth. At dawn, monks returned to the cremation site and found fresh footprints in the ashes. Bare feet. They led nowhere. In Ban Nong Phai, people began to avoid speaking Phra Chan's name aloud. They knew better than to provoke a spirit that had not accepted death. Because when a soul refuses its funeral, it is said not to seek peace, but justice. And justice, once denied, does not fade quietly. Chapter 4. Knocking at 1 in the morning. The first knock came at exactly 1 a.m. In Ban Nong Phai, that hour is known as Wela Kong Phai, the time when spirits are said to walk freely. When the boundary between the living and the dead thins without warning. Kamal was still awake when he heard it. Knock. 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 Slow, even, patient. He froze on his sleeping mat, listening. The sound did not come from the main door, but from the wooden wall beside it, as if someone stood too close, so close their knuckles brushed the grain of the planks. Kamal forced himself up and lit a lamp. The house felt colder than it should have been. When he opened the door, the yard was empty. No footprints, no movement, only the old tamarind tree swaying gently, though there was no wind. As he turned back inside, the knock came again. This time, from behind him. Kamal did not open the door again that night. From then on, the knocking returned every night at the same hour. Sometimes it came from the door, sometimes from the walls, once, from the ceiling beam above his bed. Always 3 knocks, never more, never less. The dogs in the village began to howl in the direction of Phra Chan's house. Their cries long and broken. They refused to pass near the place. Even during daylight. Kamal's dreams change. He saw Phra Chan standing beneath a wooden beam, his feet touching the ground, his hands hidden behind his back, his neck hung at an impossible angle, bent as though broken, yet his face was calm, almost patient. "I am still here," the dead man whispered. "I am waiting." Kamal woke each time with his throat tight, his fingers digging into his own neck as if checking whether it was still straight. On the 7th night, Kamal's wife heard something else. A voice. It came from outside the house, low and hoarse, repeating Kamal's name again and again. When she peered through the window, she saw a figure standing at the edge of the yard. It did not move. It did not breathe. and though the darkness hid its face, its head was tilted sharply to one side, as if something inside it had snapped and never healed. From that night onward, Kamal understood one thing with terrifying clarity. Fra Chan was no longer wandering. He had chosen where to return.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.
Chapter 5. The Woman Who Heard Her Name Called. Mina had not lived in Ban Nong Phai for many years. After the divorce, she moved to a small town across the river, far enough that memories dulled with distance. She rarely spoke of Fra Chan anymore. In her mind, he belonged to a life already finished, quiet, gentle, and painfully distant even when they had shared the same roof. That was why the voice startled her so deeply. It came just after midnight. Mina? Soft, familiar, too familiar. She sat up in bed, her heart pounding. The room was dark, the windows closed, the night insects silent as if listening. She told herself it was a dream lingering too long, the mind playing tricks when sleep refused to come. Then the voice called again. Mina, open the window. Her hands trembled as she stood. The air felt thick, pressing against her ears, making it hard to breathe. When she reached the window and pulled the curtain aside, she froze. A figure stood below. The shape was unmistakable, even in the dim light of the moon. The shoulders sloped the way Fra Chan's always had. The head was tilted unnaturally, resting at an angle no living neck could hold. His face was pale, stretched tight, his eyes open and fixed on her with a quiet, unbearable patience. I didn't leave, he said, his lips barely moved. They didn't let me speak. Mina staggered back, screaming. When neighbors rushed in moments later, they found her collapsed on the floor, clawing at her throat, gasping as if something invisible had tightened around her neck. She survived the night. But in the morning, dark marks appeared on her skin, thin, bruised lines circling her throat, faint yet unmistakable, like the memory of a rope that had never been there. Mina told the villagers everything. She swore she had heard Fra Chan's voice, that he had not accused her, nor threatened her. He had only repeated one sentence, again and again. Tell them I was silenced. Word spread quickly through Ban Nong Phai. Some dismissed her story as grief resurfacing too late. Others fell silent, remembering the funeral, the fire that refused to burn, the knocks at Kamal's house. Mina left the village that same day. But before she crossed the bridge, she turned back once, feeling a familiar weight behind her. For a brief moment, she saw him standing near the road, hands hidden behind his back, neck bent, eyes open, watching, waiting. Chapter 6. The Child Who Spoke to the Dead. Children, the elders say, can see what adults have learned to ignore. It began with Kamal's son. The boy was 6 years old, thin and quiet, the kind who preferred sitting alone in the dirt, drawing shapes with a stick while others played. He stopped laughing a week after Fra Chan's funeral. At night, he started whispering to someone no one else could see. Kamal's wife noticed first. The boy would sit at the foot of the bed, staring toward the doorway, nodding slowly as if listening. When asked who he was speaking to, he answered without hesitation, the man with the broken neck. Kamal's blood turned cold. The boy described him in unsettling detail. The way his head leaned unnaturally to the side, the rope marks that were there but also not there, the hands always hidden behind his back, as though still bound. He stands by the tree near the old house. The boy said one evening. He doesn't go inside. He says that place remembers too much. Kamal shouted at his son, demanding he stop speaking such nonsense. The boy only looked at him with calm, distant eyes. He says you know, the child whispered. He says you were there. That night, the boy drew a picture. In it, a man hung beneath a beam, but his feet touched the ground. Another figure stood behind him, hands raised, face scratched out. On the floor lay a stack of papers marked with a red seal. Above it all hovered a face with wide, unblinking eyes. Kamal tore the drawing to pieces. The next morning, the boy woke screaming. His neck was twisted sharply to the side, locked in place as if seized by unseen fingers. It took hours before it slowly returned to normal, leaving no bruise, only the memory of pain. A monk was called. He listened to the boy in silence, then shook his head. This spirit is not haunting. he said quietly. He is testifying. In Ban Nong Phai, fear began to shift into something heavier. Because a ghost seeking revenge can be avoided. But a ghost seeking truth will not stop.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.
Chapter 7. The Monk Who Could Not Look. Luang Por Wichai had performed countless rites for the dead. He was old, respected, and known for his calm presence. Villagers said that even restless spirits quieted when his voice recited the chants. When Kamal sent for him, people believed the haunting would finally end. The monk arrived before dusk, carrying only his alms bowl and a small bundle of sacred thread. He listened carefully as the villagers spoke about the knocking, the child, the dreams. He said little, only nodding as if weighing something unseen. At midnight, the chanting began. The temple was sealed. Candles lined the floor in a wide circle. As Luang Por Wichai started the first verse, the air thickened immediately. The flames bent inward, trembling. A low pressure filled the room, heavy enough to make breathing difficult. Halfway through the chant, the monk stopped. His voice failed him mid-syllable. A silence fell so complete it felt unnatural. The monk's hands shook as he lowered his gaze, refusing to look toward the far corner of the hall. "He is here," Luang Por Wichai whispered, "and he does not accept this rite." One of the younger monks asked why. The old monk swallowed hard. "Because he has been bound," he said, "not by death, but by the living." Sweat poured down his face as though he were ill. He tied the sacred thread around his wrist with trembling fingers. "There is a lock on this spirit," he continued, "and the key is still held by someone who breathes." The chanting never resumed. Before dawn, Luang Por Wichai left Ban Nong Phai without explanation. He refused food, refused conversation, and did not look back. When pressed, he said only one final sentence. "Do not force a soul to forgive when the truth has not been spoken." That night, the knocking grew louder. Not 3 times, but 7. And from that moment on, no monk in the nearby districts agreed to step foot in Ban Nong Phai again. Chapter 8. The House That Remembered Everything. No one entered Fra Chan's house anymore. The wooden structure stood at the edge of Ban Nong Phai, half hidden by tall grass and creeping vines. The door remained closed, yet every night, a faint light glowed from inside, as if an oil lamp had been left burning for someone who never returned. Those who passed too close claimed they could hear movement, slow footsteps, the dull scrape of something heavy being dragged across the floor. Sometimes, a soft creaking sound rose into the night, rhythmic and patient, like a rope. One evening, a group of villagers gathered at a distance, watching the house from the dirt road. As the moon climbed higher, a shape appeared in the window. A man stood beneath the ceiling beam. His body swayed gently, but his feet were touching the floor. The head lolled at an impossible angle, rolling slightly with each motion, as though the neck had been shattered and never mended. His hands remained hidden behind his back. Someone screamed. The figure did not vanish. Instead, it slowly turned its head, bone scraping against bone, until its wide, open eyes faced the watchers outside. The next morning, the front door of the house stood open. Inside, nothing had been disturbed except the altar. All of Fra Chan's protective charms lay torn apart, their ink smeared black, as if soaked in water or blood. On the floor beneath the beam were deep grooves in the wood, fresh and unmistakable. Marks where something had been dragged upward, then dropped. Kamal ordered the house sealed. Wooden boards were nailed across the door and windows. Red talismans were pasted over every opening. That night, the boards shook violently. The nails bent outward, one by one, as though pushed from inside. By dawn, the boards lay scattered in the yard. On the ground, written in dirt and ash, were 2 words, traced over and over by an unseen hand. I was pushed. From that moment on, no one doubted it anymore. Fra Chan had not chosen death. And the house that remembered his final moments had begun to speak in his place.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.
Chapter 9. The File That Should Not Have Existed. The folder surfaced by accident. Anand was young, newly transferred to the district office, and still believed that records were kept for a reason. He was sorting through outdated land documents when he noticed an irregular entry. Plots near Ban Nong Phai marked first as cemetery land, then later reclassified for development. The dates did not match. Buried between routine paperwork was a thin copy of a complaint. Its ink faded but legible. At the bottom of the page was a name written carefully, almost reverently. Fra Chan. Anand felt a chill run through him. He remembered the rumors, the whispers about the hanging, the neck bone that refused to burn. He read the complaint again and again. It detailed illegal land sales, forged seals, and bodies moved without rights. It named Kamal directly. That night, Anand could not sleep. He felt watched, though his apartment was locked and quiet. At exactly 1 a.m., his phone vibrated. No number. Only a single message. Do not stop. The next morning, Anand visited Ban Nong Phai. He asked careful questions, listened more than he spoke. When he mentioned Fra Chan's name, conversations ended abruptly. Eyes dropped, doors closed. As he left the village, he noticed something hanging from a tree near the road. A length of rope. That evening, on his way home, Anand's motorcycle skidded on a dry, empty road. Witnesses said there was no reason for the crash. No oil, no obstacle. He was found with his neck broken, twisted sharply to one side. In his pocket, the folder was missing. But later that night, Kamal found it waiting on his desk at home, clean, neatly placed, open to the page bearing Fra Chan's signature. The lamp beside it flickered. And behind Kamal, in the darkened window, a reflection stared back, wide-eyed, unblinking, still waiting. Chapter 10. The confession that came in sleep. Kamal stopped sleeping. When exhaustion finally dragged him into unconsciousness, the dreams came immediately, thick, heavy, impossible to escape. He found himself standing in a room with no walls, no doors, only darkness pressing inward like a living thing. Fra Chan sat across from him. Not hanging, not moving, just sitting, his hands still bound behind his back, his neck bent slightly to one side. His eyes were open, calm, unbearably patient. Kamal tried to speak, but his voice failed. The air tightened around his throat, squeezing until each breath burned. Fra Chan reached forward and placed a rope on the floor between them. Slowly, carefully. The rope looked old, worn, familiar. I did not choose this, Fra Chan said quietly. You chose silence for me. Kamal fell to his knees. Words poured out without permission. I didn't mean to kill you, he sobbed. I only wanted you to stop talking. The land, the papers, you would have ruined everything. Fra Chan said nothing. He only lifted the rope and gently placed it around Kamal's neck. Kamal woke screaming, clutching his throat. The rope lay beside him on the sleeping mat, still warm, smelling faintly of smoke and ash. From that night on, Kamal's neck began to stiffen. Each morning, it tilted slightly farther to the side. Doctors found nothing wrong. Monks refused to help. He started speaking aloud when alone, begging forgiveness from empty rooms. His wife heard him whisper names in the dark, Fra Chan's, Anand's, others she did not recognize. At exactly 1 a.m., the knocking stopped. Instead, footsteps circled his bed. Slow, measured, unavoidable. Kamal understood then that confession alone meant nothing. Truth demanded witnesses. And the dead man was no longer asking. He was preparing.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.
Chapter 11. When the village began to break. The deaths no longer felt isolated. At first, people tried to explain them away, accidents, illness, bad luck, but in Ban Nong Phai, patterns mattered, and this pattern was impossible to ignore. Within a single week, 3 villagers died. None of them were hanged. None showed signs of struggle. Yet every body was found the same way. Necks twisted sharply to one side. Eyes open. Mouths parted, as if caught mid-breath. The first was an old man who had helped move boundary stones years ago. The second, a clerk who had stamped papers without reading them. The third, a land broker who had laughed when villagers complained about disturbed graves. Fear spread faster than truth ever had. At night, People heard footsteps outside their homes, slow, deliberate, stopping just short of the door. Some swore they felt fingers brush their throats while sleeping. Others woke with bruises blooming across their necks, dark and tender, though no hands had touched them. Dogs refused to bark anymore. They hid beneath houses, trembling, whining softly as if begging something unseen to pass them by. The temple bells rang on their own one evening, their sound dull and uneven, echoing across the fields. When monks arrived, they found the main hall empty, except for deep grooves in the floor beneath the central beam. Marks of something dragged upward, then released. Villagers began packing their belongings. Entire families left before dawn, abandoning houses that had stood for generations. No one tried to stop them. Kamal watched it all unfold from his home, his neck now permanently bent, his voice reduced to a rasp. He knew the truth had grown too large to contain. Fra Chan was no longer haunting individuals. He was dismantling the lie that held the village together. In Thailand, it is said that when injustice is shared by many, punishment will be shared as well. Ban Nong Phai had lived too long in borrowed silence. And now, the debt was being collected. Chapter 12. The truth dug from the ground. The village gathered at dawn. No one had called the meeting, yet everyone knew where to go. They stood near the old burial land at the edge of Ban Nong Phai, the place Fra Chan had warned about. The place no one admitted to remembering clearly. Kamal arrived last. He walked with difficulty, his head permanently tilted, his face pale and sunken. Each step looked forced, as if his body no longer agreed with his intentions. When he tried to speak, only broken sounds came out at first. The villagers waited. They had already seen enough. With trembling hands, Kamal pointed toward the earth. Men began to dig. The soil was loose, disturbed long ago and hastily covered. It did not take long before the smell rose, old, damp, unmistakable. Bones emerged. Not one grave. Several. Skulls cracked, ribs snapped, necks bent at wrong angles. A low murmur spread through the crowd. Some wept, others backed away in horror, hands covering their mouths. Kamal collapsed to his knees. I told them to scare him, he whispered at last, his voice tearing through his throat. Just scare him. He wouldn't stop. He said the dead were calling him. Tears streamed down his face as words spilled uncontrollably. They held his arms. I pushed him. He hit the beam. His neck, Kamal choked, clutching his own throat. He was still breathing when we tied the rope. A sudden gust of wind tore through the clearing. Candles extinguished instantly. The temperature dropped so sharply that breath turned visible in the morning air. Behind Kamal, the dirt shifted. A footprint appeared. Bare, slow, deliberate. Then another. Kamal screamed as his neck twisted further. Bones cracking audibly. He fell forward, face pressed into the soil among the exposed bones, sobbing in a voice no longer entirely human. A whisper passed through the crowd, carried on the wind. You have spoken. For the first time since Fra Chan's death, the earth fell silent. But no one felt relief. Because in Thailand, truth does not end a haunting. It only tells the spirit where to go next.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.
Chapter 13. The Rite to Untie the Dead. No monk volunteered. Those who heard what happened at the burial ground refused to come. Some claimed illness. Others simply closed their doors and pretended not to be home. In the end, the villagers turned to something older than temples, older than formal doctrine. A ritual remembered only by the elders. At sunset, they gathered at the site where Fra Chan's bones had been found. No chanting bells were used. No statues were placed. Only candles, incense, white thread, and the full name of the dead written carefully on cloth. Fra Chan's name was spoken aloud for the first time since his death. The air grew still. An elderly woman led the rite. Her voice cracked but steady. She did not pray for forgiveness. She did not ask the spirit to leave. Instead, she spoke the truth. She named the crime. She named the silence. She named those who had benefited. With each name spoken, the candles bent sharply, flames stretching sideways as if pulled by an unseen breath. When Kamal's name was read, the ground beneath him trembled. He cried out, clutching his neck, his head jerking violently to one side. The woman continued. "We return what was taken," she said, "your voice, your name, your place among the dead." The white thread was cut. A sound rose from the darkness around them, not a scream, but a long, weary exhale. Many fell to their knees, overcome by sudden grief not their own. At the edge of the clearing, a figure appeared. Fra Chan stood quietly, no rope around his neck now, though his head still leaned slightly to one side. His hands were free, his eyes, still open, were no longer searching. He bowed once. The candles went out together. When the villagers looked again, he was gone. That night, the house at the edge of Ban Nong Phai was dark for the first time since his death. No light, no movement, no sound. They believed it was over. They were wrong. Because some spirits leave, and some stay, not for revenge, but to make sure the living remember the cost of silence. Chapter 14. What remained after the dead let go. Morning came gently for the first time in weeks. The air in Ban Nong Phai felt lighter, as if something heavy had finally been lifted from the land. Dogs barked again. Birds returned to the tamarind trees near the river. Even the temple bells rang clear, without the dull, uneven tone that had haunted the village nights. People dared to believe the spirit had moved on. Fra Chan's house stood silent at the edge of the fields. When a few villagers approached in daylight, they found the door open but untouched. Inside, the floor was clean. The beam above no longer bore fresh marks. The altar had been restored, its surface smooth, as though unseen hands had carefully erased the past. Only one thing remained. On the floor beneath the beam lay a short length of rope. Neatly coiled, it was old, brittle, and no longer smelled of smoke. No one admitted to leaving it there. Kamal did not attend the morning gathering. He stayed inside his house, sitting alone on the floor, staring at the wall. His neck remained twisted, locked permanently to one side. Doctors confirmed it would never straighten again. No painkillers eased the constant ache. No prayers brought relief. At night, Kamal still woke at exactly 1 a.m. There were no knocks now. No footsteps. No whispers. Only the feeling of someone standing behind him. Watching. Not accusing. Not forgiving. His wife said he sometimes spoke softly in the dark. Not to a ghost, but to himself. He repeated names, dates, places, details no one had asked for. Confessions without listeners. In Thailand, it is believed that when a wrong is finally righted, the spirit may depart, but the memory of the act remains embedded in those who caused it. The village returned to normal slowly. Fields were replanted, houses repaired, but no one rebuilt near the old burial land. No one questioned why. At the edge of Ban Nong Phai, the road past Fra Chan's house was avoided after sunset. Some claimed they felt a presence there, not angry, not restless, only firm. As if reminding passers-by, the dead may forgive, but the land remembers.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.
Chapter 15. The living who were never released. Years later, Ban Nong Phai no longer appeared on most maps. People still lived there, but fewer each season. The young left first, then the middle-aged. Only the old remained, those who understood that some places are not meant to be abandoned, even when they are heavy with memory. Kamal lived the longest. His body weakened, but his neck never straightened. It remained bent at the same angle Fra Chan's had been the night he died. When asked why he never left the village, Kamal answered in a voice barely louder than breath. "He didn't tell me to go." At night, Kamal sat alone, lamp unlit, eyes fixed on the darkness behind him. He claimed he no longer saw Fra Chan clearly, only the outline of a man standing just out of sight. Not accusing. Not judging. Waiting. When Kamal died, there was no struggle. He was found seated, hands resting on his knees, eyes open. His neck was twisted further than it had ever been in life. Bone pressing visibly against skin. No rope was found. At his funeral, the fire burned cleanly. No bones resisted, no ashes shifted. Yet when the villagers returned home, each found a thin line of dirt across their thresholds, as though traced by bare feet during the night. No one crossed those lines until morning. Fra Chan's name is rarely spoken now. But when elders tell the story to children, they do not speak of ghosts or curses. They say this instead. A man was silenced. The dead demanded truth. And the living paid the price of knowing it too late. In Thailand, it is believed that a spirit who dies unjustly does not seek eternity. It seeks acknowledgement. And once given, it leaves behind something far more difficult to escape. A warning. Because the dead may depart. But the injustice that created them never truly does. In Thailand, people say that when the dead finally receive justice, they leave quietly. No screams, no curses, no vengeance. But the living are never the same. Because some truths arrive too late to save anyone. And some stories exist only to remind us of what silence can cost. If you ever hear a knock in the night, or feel someone standing just behind you, remember this story. Not every ghost is asking to be feared. Some are only asking to be heard.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.